Are you interested in learning about Next.js 13 and its new features like app router? This tutorial covers concepts like routing and layouts, and you'll learn how to create nested layouts to optimize your application's performance and avoid any unnecessary re-renders. Other very important topics that we'll cover is how Next.js has changed server-side rendering and data fetching in their latest version, and how we should think about these changes and implement them, of course. Whether you're already familiar with Next.js and trying to understand their new patterns, or you're a beginner learning the concepts for the first time, this tutorial will be helpful in both cases. Not only that, but you also learn how to create killer animations and modern responsive stylings to provide the best experience for your users. While covering these topics, we'll build an Airbnb clone. We'll focus on building search functionality that includes 3 different types of filters and redirects to the results page. On that page, we'll build responsive cards for every single result and an option to heart the result, as Airbnb has. And in the end, we'll add a mobile menu to make sure our application is mobile responsive. Please note that this video will only cover the front end, and we will create server and client components, but will not build a backend to communicate with from our application. I'm planning to add that in the next video. Also, this video has chapters, and almost every chapter has its own branch, which you can check out from GitHub. The link of the repository is in the description. That way, I want to make sure that you're never lost during this tutorial and are always able to continue with the same code as in the video. That being said, let's get started with the tutorial, and if you enjoy my videos, please like and subscribe. That really helps the channel grow as we are on the path to hit the next milestone, which is 30K in July. We can start by creating a new next project, and we can do that using this command, create next app. And after the next step comes the name of the project. I named it Airbnb. And if you want to use the exact next version that I'm using in this tutorial when I'm taking the video, it's 13.4.42. But if you don't add the version by default, Next will use the latest version. But just in case everything follows the way I'm using and not to come across any conflicts. And when we hit enter, if you don't have already installed create next app command, like in this case, it's going to ask you if you want to install. So I'm just going to say yes and proceed. And then it'll ask us how do we want our project to configure. So this is what I'm going to select for the project. No for TypeScript and ESLint, but I would select, we'll use Tailwind CSS for styling. And also for the source directory, we're going to say no. And we're going to use the new app router, which is basically a new paradigm, next element for after creating, like using pages route. This is the next paradigm for creating pages and layouts. Would you like to customize the default import alias? And on that one, we're gonna say no. We'll start installing all the dependencies. Alright, so I have the project open in VS Code, and I'm gonna run it by going to terminal inside it and using the command npm run deb. That should open our project on localhost 3000, and we navigate to it by command clicking. That opens up in a browser, and this is what our like a boilerplate template is coming up from Next.js. So where is this code coming from? Mostly it is from this page.js, which is, as previously was index.js, and this is all the code. And we also have a layout which contains so far just metadata. And what layout is that it's shared, all the children that are going to be inside this app are gonna share this logic and be wrapped into, for example, body HTML. Okay, let's see how easy it is to create a page, and for that I'll just inside the app create a new folder, name it search. I want the route of the page to be /search, so that's why I'm naming it. And for creating page new file, the name should be page.js. Inside here we're just gonna create like a functional component, so that would be export default function page, and we don't have any props in it so far. and going to return just the header that says my page. This is what we'll get, and as you can see there's some like weird gradient lines, so to remove that, it's coming from styling from Next.js, so global CSS is the file we're gonna go to, and starting from media to the body, this styling we're gonna remove. If we save this, it's gone. And now let's see how we can create a layout for this page that we have, so that all the logic related to search right now and all the other pages that we're going to add are going to go into search folder, which is convenient. Also the client components, and this concept is called decoupling, so organizing your code based on the functionality. So without further explanation, I'm going to create layout.js file, and so far what we want in the layout is the header, and let's create the layout component first. Afterwards we're gonna import and create header into it. So export default function, we can name this search. So if we do that right now, this shows up at the top. So let's actually create the header element now and then export that into our code. So header, new file, .jsx, and inside header, as Airbnb has, there's like a search box, input, user can interact with it. Since it comes with some interactivity and UI, this is going to be our first client component, and the way we define client components in React Next.js is by adding use client at the top. So let's code the rest of it out. Export default function header, we have no props, and we're gonna return, I will use the HTML header tag, and inside here we're gonna have 3 divs and then the other divs nested in there. So div first one is gonna be just the logo on the left side, so that's Airbnb. And then the next one we want to do, so this is where the search goes, and at the end some like the user information, and we'll make this a container, then we'll make this flex, and justify is going to be between, and let's set the height to 10. Save this, and now we don't have any differences because we have not imported it yet. So import header from, so here we see our header at the top. Let's add some inputs into search. So what I will do, I'm gonna close this out, and I'm gonna move this to the side, so while we're updating the styling we can see some changes. So first we can change the color of this. Class name equals text, red, maybe like 500, so that becomes the Airbnb color. And let's turn this search actually into a div with multiple inputs in it. So first class name, I'm just gonna give it search container. I also want to set it rounded large, and then I'll have so this would be for anywhere. Then we have any date and add guests. It's interesting that it did not get updated. Oh, maybe there's an error. So we open up console, there isn't any. Okay, so I realized the reason when we're saving changes here and they're supposed to automatically reload in the page and it's not happening is because header is not, the name of the file is not capital. So for components, we're gonna have capital. Otherwise, for layout and page and other like components that don't get re-rendered, then those would be with the lowercase. So now it will ask us if you wanna update the imports. If it doesn't ask you, you have to automatically, one import of header is in layout, so we would have to update layout. We can wrap the children in the main and go back to header. So now let's say if we turn search container flex, we should see the updates coming in. All right, let me close the other files and I'll start by updating the main parent component of this one first. So height we have that set to 10. Now I'm gonna update border bottom only. Then this is already set to flex, background white. Also z-index 50. What this is gonna do is if it's higher than other components, we always want header to be showing at the top. We also want position fixed and width to be full. Let's save this and we can see the border right here. Now moving on to the search container. So flex column, let's add a gap in between those elements. So gap 3, and we also want to add border on the right side for the first 3. And we'll add another div for search. And we'll turn our search container into a button. So when this button is clicked, we'll have expanded like a bigger container that contains all the other advanced search elements, and those are have their drop downs as well. But to have like store the information that this has been clicked, we need the state. So here we're gonna create our first state. First, we need to import use a state hook from React. So after doing that, we're gonna name our state. So constant, this would be is expanded, and set is expanded how we are gonna update the state. Use state, and in use state we pass in the default value, which in this case is gonna be false. Unless user clicks on it, it's not going to be expanded. And once we have that, we are gonna create a function that we're gonna pass into this button. So constant toggle expanded, name of the function, and it doesn't take in anything. Only thing it does is that it would set is expanded to opposite of what is currently stat. So we're gonna take the previous is and set to exclamation mark. When we're working with booleans is how we access the opposite of it. So if this is true, it will get set to false and vice versa. So button on click, this equals to toggle expanded. Now, if you don't already have, I recommend installing React DevTools. It is easy to manage the state because we don't need to on click, I misspelled it, and we wouldn't need to like do console logs and those sorts of. Actually, this is gonna be the opposite of not what is expanded, but like a previous state. Let's save this and go to components. Once we want to examine a certain component, we use this selector here, and if we, for example, press it here, it should select. For some reason, let me reload, and usually, yeah, so we target the header and we see the state here is false. So now if I click it, it should get updated to true as shown here. Great. So now what we can do is, if this is expanded, we can display the more, as I mentioned, the complete advanced search. So for that, let's inside a search component, search folder, create a new components folder where we're gonna keep all these components, and in here we can create a new file, name it searchbar.jsx. I have an extension that snippets should load automatically when I type this in, but it seems like it's not working. It's like a VS Code extension. So let's create a functional component, search, return, export, default. Okay, and then in here, let's first create a div element. Inside div, once again, we're gonna have like 3 sections. First one is gonna be for the location, and this will be button. And if somebody, first we'll just display like p tag that says search destinations. And second up, we have another div, and the label of this one is going to be dates, and below, like subtext, is going to be select ranges. So let's do dates, and after that we can do and final input that we have is going to be add guest. So I'm just gonna copy this over and say add guest. Let's save it, and inside the header here, now we are going to import this search bar, and if it is expanded, we'll display this search bar. So import search bar, and remember this is inside the components folder, so we have to indicate that. Now how do we do conditional rendering? That's gonna be inside the header here. We can take this button that's for our like basic search, so to call, and we can say if is expanded question mark, then display search bar, and then if not, the other search. So this got reloaded. Let's see if there's search bar is not exported. Okay, oh, because it's a default export. So I'm gonna remove the curly braces and save it. Now we should be good. So if I click here, I get the other search. Let's now leave this state open and modify some of the styling and change some logic. So first I'm gonna start with the parent, so make it flex direction, we want it to be row, self center, and rounded, let's make it full, also border around it, padding 2, margin top 8, and with about 3/4 of the whole parent container. And after that, we can start with the button. So what we want to do with the button is when somebody clicks on it, we want it to turn it to an input so user can type it in, right? So for that, to save when it's clicked, we need another use state. So import use state. We already know how to create one, and let's practice it now, but this case we're gonna give it a different name. So something like is search focused, and set is search focused. This one also by default it is false till user clicks on it, and we can say on click, and we can call like this is called callback function, and this would be set is search focused, pass the parameter true. And in here we can define the logic. Once again, we're using, the conditional rendering. So if is search focused is set to true, then we want to display an input. And if not, then we can keep just the paragraph destination. So input, what type it is, it's text, and we can say placeholder, same text as we have on this one. So just copying that over here. So now if I click it, this is a search box, and we can add some styling so that it matches that of another element. So class name, we can do text, slate, 800, background, transparent, what else? Border, none, because it has like this border when I click it. Also outline, none. Okay, so that is better. And let's do update also for the class name here. We're gonna say text slate 600, and let's also, the other ones have like the main title and then the subtitle. So this is gonna be subtitle. Let's also add the main title. So this goes in both cases, will show up. So above this, and class name equals, let's do font bold for all of the, copying this, and title where. All right, that's good. Let's add that onto the dates and guests. Great. And for the subtitles, I'm gonna copy this class name that's slightly like changes color, makes it look lighter, so we have visually we are able to distinguish between the two. Alright, what we're gonna add next is a drop down, and we'll add it on our search. For locations, we don't need it because we already have a text box already in place. But for dates, we need to show the calendar, and it's not gonna fit in here. Same thing for guests, we're gonna add a counter inside of the drop down. So what we're gonna use for drop down is Daisy UI. It is a component library built on top of Tailwind, so you can still use Tailwind classes. It just comes with a little bit more configuration, so you can use already built components, and we install it by running this command, which I'm gonna copy here, go to my code in the terminal and add a new tab, paste it. While that is running, let's take a look at how we can add a drop down. So here is the documentation, and drop down can open a menu or any other element when button is clicked. So the class name we need for when we're targeting the button is the drop down, and the content itself is drop down content, and they also have a code in here that we can take a look at. So, and the way we identify which drop down opens which tab is using tab index, and here are our classes. Okay, let's get into writing that. We don't need to import anything at the top, we just need to add those classes. So first I'm going to add that on the dates, select ranges. Let me just quickly update this name. And so first the wrapper, this would be class name equals to, and we can also configure which side the drop down shows up. For example, if it's aligned to the end, this is how it is, and then there's a like this class, so we're gonna do that one. And after that, the container for the drop down itself. So as I mentioned, this is going to be with the class name drop down content, and we have to pass in the same index. So if we temporarily add range selector here, oh, we need to add inside Tailwind config.js file this plugins, otherwise that's why it's probably not loading. So here we have plugins, and I'm gonna paste it so it uses Daisy UI. Now let's rerun this, and since we updated the configuration, we can rerun the app and refresh once it's done. All right, so now if we click on it, this will show up and it hides when we click away. All right, I'm gonna close this documentation now, and let's add the same thing for the guest. So first one, I can just copy this except for border on the right side because the guest is the last element, so we don't need border on that. And let's do label tab index. Now we have to use a different number since we're targeting a different element. So I'm going to add 2 in here, and here equals 2, and we can add the rest of this classes. So this is where the counter will go, and for the counter we're going to create separate component, but let's first make sure that it shows up. All right, great. So going back to where we have components folder, this is new file. So basically counter would let users select number of guests they want to search for. So new file, counter.jsx, and here we also need to track the number that users have selected, so we need usestate for that. And then we create our functional component, export constant counter. We can create this as a reusable if anywhere in the application we need counter. So what we can do is we can pass a label. So what's going to show up in this case, it's going to be a number of guests, and we also, as I mentioned, track down the guest count and set guest count. Or actually we can just use count since this is reusable, and set count. That equals to use state, and by default this is state. So let's return, so it's going to be minus icon, and then on the label in between, and then plus icon. And by default, if it is 0, we're not gonna display because we don't want it to go to negative. So that would be, let's create the outer container, and we also want everything to be displayed on the same row. So I'm going to create a flex container and justify between. Then we have our label at the top, so label items.center, and when we are creating flex element, we can indicate gap as in how big the space is between the children flex items. So as I mentioned, the minus is only going to show up when we have more than 1. So guest count more than 0, I mean more than 0, and if this is true, then we can show up, and then this is going to be a button, and then we display the count itself. So I'm going to create another span for this one. And finally, we have the same, and also we want when user clicks on minus or plus this to get updated. So since this would almost do the same thing except for increment and decrement, it would make sense to create another component and just be able to pass that component the props. So constant count icon, and this equals to icon, which would be different, and then on click we'll pass different functions. So it's going to return a button, which on click would trigger the function that we are passing. And then inside span, we display that icon. And then what happens on click is that we are passing a callback function in which we are taking set count, and so previous count and previous count minus 1, right? And we can copy this, but instead we don't need this condition because it will be displayed all the time. And update, so this is going to be plus and plus. Let's save this. Let's import this counter in the search bar. So import, it was an export, right? So we need curly braces, counter, place that. All right. So now if we click, we do see 0, and if we increment, we see the minus sign. Now let's configure this so the icons are like rounded and they look more like buttons. So we are going to go to count icon, and inside of the button here, let's add a class name. So we want it to have a border, and it's supposed to be circular, so rounded full. Then setting the width, setting the height. You can do flex because we want this to be centered, and we have not passed the label to it. So label equals to, let's do adults 2, and then on 0, close this out. Now before moving to the search results and search, let's add one more thing to our search. That would be the calendar. So for the calendar, we'll use this module React date range, and it has this like calendar date range selection, which is what we need and what we're gonna show in the dropdown that we created. So first step is we have to install this React date range, and then it has a one more dependency, and let's add that as well. So npm install save react date range, and another package I'm going to install is date fns. So it's basically uses this second package to display dates, and we would also need that. And all right, that is installed, and to use it we have to import the style and theme files. We can either do this in the main file, or we can do it in the file that we are going to be, if it's only one place then that we are using this, then we can just do it there, which is in our case search bar. So okay, let's import the files, and after that is important, we need date range picker. So I'm gonna import the module here, and let's see how it works. They have also just like the calendar one, but so we create a function that's going to handle the selection, and then we pass it this object as a props here, and this object contains like 3 fields, which is start date, end date, and a selection. So let's first create a state so we can keep track what is the start date and the end date. So constant start date set start date, that equals to, so if you go to Airbnb, it's gonna set the start date to like today. So if you create a new date, that's what it's gonna do, set to the current date, and constant end date set end date. This is going to be null because it's not set unless user selects it. And let's create this selection range object. So render, we don't have a class component, so what we can do is just do that before return. So, but instead of new date, we're gonna pass here our state, and same thing for this one as well. So key, let's leave that to selection, and handle, let's write a handle select function. So constant handle select that equals to, so it's taking in ranges as an argument, and what we can do, so this ranges contains a, so this is what's inside ranges, so we can take ranges that selection that start date and set it to start date. So start date ranges the date, let's fix that one, and second part, let me just copy this and replace it with end date. All right, so we have that, and we can add some like verification. And so for example, if we don't want like extra state reload, so if the start date is already selected, then we don't want to reload the state, because reloading state also reloads components, right? So let's check if ranges selection dot start date doesn't equal to start date, then we place this inside here, or actually, and the same thing if ranges that selection dot end date doesn't equal to end date. Let's do that, save it, and now we can place our date range picker component, because we created a function and props for it, and it's gonna go inside here. So let's do date range picker. So for ranges we have, and pass it as an array, selection, and then we can also pass minimum date, because we don't want users to select like past before today, and also Airbnb doesn't let us, so that makes sense. So on change is going to be handle select, and we can also customize the colors, because as you saw here it's using blues, and we can use the Airbnb colors. So that's going to be colors, we pass it as an array. You can pass multiple colors, but I have one, so that's what I'm gonna pass, and I'm gonna copy the color hash and paste it. Let's forget the closing tag and save that. See what we have here. Oh, that's our calendar. So because we don't have an end date, it shows continuous, but let's do this selection and in here. And then if we close this out and open it again, it should have the state saved, regardless if the dropdown is open or not. To add the search button here after our selections for search input, we can go after the last dropdown and add button. So inside here we can add span search, and this button class name, let's add some styling. So padding on the sides, text white, rounded, full. Also background, let's set it to primary, padding 4, flex, and then we wanna center our text, and after that we're gonna add an icon. So we want some space in between icon and text, so gap 3, and flags would be row. So let's save this, showing up search. Okay, so the primary color right now is set by default to purple, but we can update that and set it to like the Airbnb color, which is this one, or we can just use pink. So to update that, we go to Tailwind configuration, file, colors, and set primary modify to this. And we can also set a default border color, and that would be border color default, and it's gonna be like light gray, similar to how Airbnb has, and we need comma in between this. Let's save this, and now our borders are more darker so we can see them better, and this is the search that we have. Okay, now let's add the icon, and afterwards we're gonna fix some of the styling in the header. And for adding icons, we are going to use this package here, Hero Icons. It is also made by the makers of Tailwind CSS. And going into documentation, let's see how we can install it. And okay, so we copied this command npm install hero icons react and run it inside our application, and then we browse icons from their website, like library, and then import it in this way. And but instead of picker icon, we need let's do search. Okay, so magnifying glass, and I'm gonna update the name icon. And it's also really easy to update the styling of the icons because we pass class names, Tailwind CSS class names work. So let's add that right here, and setting the width and height, so 5, and it's the color, because the parent is color white, it will also should pick up the color, and that's our icon right there. Save it, and let's update the parent component. So adding some padding, rounded, full, background, primary once again, and the height of this one should be greater than the height of this, and we need to make this in the center. So what we can do is we can make the parent container relative, and then if we make the child absolute, that's gonna add like how it should be positioned. It's gonna position according to the parent. So let me show you what I'm talking about. First, text white, that's gonna make it color white, and setting this absolute. So now nothing changes, but if we indicate top should be 1/2 and left should be 1/2, so that would like center it. You can do also from the right, etc. So that would push it down, and then translate from the x-axis, and then when you start with the dash, that means we're going for negative in Tailwind, and translate, this is similar to setting it -50% if you have seen that CSS before. All right, and that's center. Now we can update the styling of the header, and one thing you'll notice is that when we have this more advanced search open, we want to update the height of the header, right? So that would be like conditionally when this expanded state is set to true, then we need a different height. So if we do that inside here, when we pass the class name, which is possible, but then the class names and managing it would get messy, and also Tailwind needs to know the classes at the render, so not calculated when it's passed. So let me explain what I'm talking about. So div class name equals, let's set height to 7.5 rem, and let's wrap everything inside header in this container. So now we have the height of this one, but if let's say this is expanded, where's the div coming from? So question mark, and then we want height 13 rem, right? I didn't close it. So anytime in Tailwind when we want to pass like a custom value, usually height can be small, large, then we use brackets and pass in the values. So let's see. Now the height is 7 point. If we inspected, I have 10 set somewhere. Let me remove that. Okay, so what we got here, 7.5 rem, and then now if we open it, that updates to 13 rem. But if we want to add other classes that are same to all of them, for example, I want to pass this as a container, then it means that I have to update this one as well, and just gets messy to manage it. So what I use instead is this small like utility package for constructing class names conditionally, and then what you do is you pass default class names, and then you can also pass in conditions, and I'll show you guys how we can do that. And first let's install this class name, like managers, so to say. And once we have that, we're gonna import it at the top. So that is how it's done. Either import works, and we can define header classes. So header container classes equals CLCX. And first we go on with classes that's gonna be by default. So container, we want to center our container. Then we wanted to make it flex, justify. So we do have justify between and background white. Then add some padding, and now this is where we pass the conditions. So that's a new object. Height would be 7.5 rem, and then condition is not is expanded, and I 13 rem. That's when it is expanded. Right now we can take this and instead replace it with this one, and once we have that, I'm gonna remove so flex, justify between, we don't need this here, fixed border bottom. Okay, that looks good. Our icon. Okay, let's also remove container from this header since the inner element has it, so that looks better. And if we open this, and later on we're gonna turn this into a model and add some cool animations to better display the transition it's in between these two, like expanded search and not expanded one. So make sure to not miss it out and stay tuned. So border right, and okay, adding some padding and text left. All right, and we can do the same for search container classes. So in here I'm gonna create a new object, name it search container classes, and that equals to CLCX, and start listing the class names that we want to add. So that would include search container, then we have it flex row, and let's see, so actually instead of rounded, so we will replace this one with this. Okay, and instead of rounded large that we had, let's do full. Add some padding, justify center, items also center, and we haven't added the border yet, so let's add that as well, and a little bit of shadow, which would be drop shadow the medium, background white, and also conditional statement that if it's not expanded, border bottom is 0. Otherwise, let's set that to 8. So flex. Okay. So now we're moving on to building out the search page, the rest of the search page with the results. And what do we want is that by default, when a user lands on this page, we want to show just like a different page. And once they click on the search, we want to show them like search results based on the search they input. So these two are going to be different pages. And what's great about like the new app router is that we can do nested layouts, and right in between this page updates, the layout components that are shared, in this case the search component at the top, those don't get reloaded. So the states get retained and we navigate to a different page without losing anything or reloading that component. So let's see how we can do that. So first, let's examine what do we have on the search page. That is my page, and we are on the search page right now, but as you can see, there's no text showing up that says my page. The reason of this is because we have to update the layout. So what's going on in the layout, that we have header displayed at the top, and then we have main children. So this instead, actually the page, my page, is in here, but it gets overridden by the header, so we have to update the layout. So if we examine in here and type it in my page, we're gonna see that it shows up at the top, and this change would be fairly simple, because what we have to do is add the class name to main. You can make this relative and top set to 7.5 rem. That's the height of the header. Then we have some padding in the top. Let's set 4. Also, let's wrap this inside container and center the container. Save this, so that should push it down. It didn't get, oh, class name. Okay, now here it is. now if we wanted to create a nested layout, that we would do by, so for example, after search, we go to another URL, right? So that would be inside search, and we create new folder. That would be results. And inside the results, if we create new file, that is page.js, and we create export default function page. No params, we're gonna return h1. This is results page. Here. So if we navigate into search results, we get the results page, and we didn't have to add this layout at the top. It was already shared because it's coming from the parent layout. So parent is a search right here, and parent layout. But if we wanted to results inside have another layout, we can add also the same way that we did search. So this is nested, right? So same way we did search layout page, we can do the same for us. But for now, we don't need layout because we're not gonna have any more nested pages in here, and we're just gonna work off of this page. And let's see how state can be retained. So let's make this button actually a next link and see how we can programmatically navigate to that page, because right now I just updated the URL. So that is where next link comes in. And if we go to the search bar, and turn this button into a link, we would have to first at the top import, not this one, but import, it's not a from, next link, and lots of link components. So import link from next link, and instead of traditional ahref, we're gonna wrap this into link href. So let's turn this button, and this would be, so we are already inside search, so search results. Okay, and now if we, so let's for example select 3 guests and set the date for August. If we press search, we go to search results, but this page is already open, so it covers up the page. But we can see that if we examine, this URL got updated, right? And then we have results page. Oh, what I think I named it my results. Oh, results page. Yep, results page in here. And also if we open up the state of this search component, that's part of the layout, retained, right? Data in the JSON format inside our app folder, and name of the file is listingsdata.json. You can create your own array if you want to, or if you want to use this one exactly, I'm gonna include a link to the gist in the description, so you can just grab this file, or if you just want to continue from this point, like all the code that we have, you can check out the GitHub repo that's also going to be in the description, and the name of the branch for this section of so far what we've done is 1.1 header routing. So what we're doing in this part of the tutorial is we are fetching the data from an API. So we have to create an API, fetch the data, and we're doing server-side rendering, so fetching the data on the server side in server components. So first let's get started. As I mentioned, we have to create an API to fetch the data, and that would happen in the API folder. Usually in the previous versions in the source we had a sample API folder. I don't see one in here, but we can create it. And in here we can create another folder for different use cases. Oh, that's the file, not the folder. Search, and now the file, which would be route.js. So in here we need to import next response because we're going to take this data from this file and then return it as a API response. So that would be next response from next server. This is an asynchronous function, so export async function, and the type of this is get because we just returned the data, and the parameters can be TypeScript, so we don't need to indicate type, and we return next response. .json passing listings data. This route, which is API and search, we should get back the data, and here it is, our JSON. Now how do we fetch this from our component? So this would be on the server component, and depending on where we need this data, so this is just general, like all results. So let's do it on my page, which is on search and page. We can turn now page into an async function. So we do that by writing async function page, and then constant result equals await fetch. And since this is coming from API, we don't need to pass the whole route, just the route of our like inner, based on our inner file structure. And constant data equals to, once again, await result.json. Now we can take this, wrap so data dot map, so listing, and we can display like listing ID. And then key also to mark that they are unique paragraphs. Here, fail to parse API search. If we have to indicate localhost as well, so I'm gonna try that. But previously when I used to make API calls, okay, so this is coming in now, so we have like 6 results. Let's start creating a listing card so we can better display this data coming from the server. So this is server component, right? And then we can either display that inside server component, but if you want to add interactivity, for example, when a listing is coming in, we want users be able to favorite it or review it, something like that, then we need client components, the ones that we mark with use client. So from page, we're gonna do rendering, fetching on page, but then we're gonna pass this data using props to the client components. Inside components, new file, info card, we mark this using use client. Import, we'll need use state for updates of the state, whether it is the favorited or not, the listing. So that's from React, and we're also going to use heart icon and the star icon for the buttons. So heart icon, So there will be two heart icons. One would be when it's not filled, one would be when it is filled. So you need to import both of them. But since they have the same names and they're coming from like different packages, we would have to rename that, and I'll show you guys how that's done. So this is for solo. If we leave it like that, we're gonna get an error, and heart icon as filled heart icon. This is how you rename your imports. Next up is star icon. Gonna copy this, and that's it. So in our functional component info card, we get listing as a props, and then we can start displaying it. So first we create a parent div, and then inside here at the top we wanna show like the image. So I'm gonna create new image with the image tag. And so you may be wondering why I'm not using a Next.js image. It does have an image component which you can import using this command. And for local images, good thing and new about the 13 version is that it automatically calculates the width and the height, so you don't have to provide it anymore because it has access to it. But if it is remote images, you do have to provide width and the height, which is harder when you are creating like dynamic cards and you also don't know like that every image is of the same size. That's why I'm using the source, but if you'd like, it would be the same code if you switch it up and use Next.js image. Okay, so after that, at the top we wanna have image, then we have this section for the other information. Let's add some padding to have a distance between image and that information. And first part we're gonna do where we have like a title and then the description. So I'm gonna use heading 3, and this is where listing name goes. And after we can have listing rating. So star icon, let's set the height and width to 5. Text yellow 500. Listing the rating. Okay, after this, let's do description, followed by a button that's gonna show heart icon. We'll do the button clicking logic and the heart icon conditional display afterwards. What else do we have? I think that should be it. Export default info card. And inside results, we can create a new component that's gonna display that's gonna take in the data as a props, and then it will, using info card, display it. So new file, results list.jsx, and export constant So let's take in data here. And let's import info card. return and purely display first data dot map listing and every time we map the data out, we have to pass the key, which has to be unique, so that would be listing.id. Export info card. Okay, so this results list, we go to page, and wherever we have this data mapped out, and we'll replace it with the info card. Okay, let's remove this and data equals to okay, here it is coming in here and taking a look. Info card is not defined, so probably export default, import it in so it's oh, I haven't saved it. Okay, here's our listings with the images, and let's do the styling now. So first heart of the star, it shouldn't be, oh interesting, I did set, okay, create this as a grid first. So you can create grid elements by just adding grid and then defining what kind of conditions you want. So on columns, I want on the smaller screen, so by default we pass what happens on the mobile, and then on larger screens we want columns 3 as well as gap between them and margin top just 4, so that on this screen it's here, on larger screen it looks like this. And let's also, to observe changes of at least one component, I'm gonna set aside like this. And starting with the info card now, parent container, maximum width medium, then we want it to be centered. Let's also add some shadow and rounded large while overflow is hidden. And yeah, we do get this around the corners with some shadow in it. Afterwards, where's our images here? So width we want to set to full. Height, let's do 48. Object, cover, transition, transform. So when somebody like hovers over, we wanna increase the image. So for that transition animation, we are setting the duration now. And transform, so for the hover, then we set condition scale, and then let's do 100, so extra like 10%. And yeah, this is the effect, looks nice. Now let's move on to the listing information. Let's stretch this out on the side, so making it flex. Items center, then we have justify between, that's gonna move them side to side, and margin bottom to 2. So yeah, now let's work on this piece. We also want that to be on side by side. flex items center. Perfect. Update maybe h3. Headers by default in Tailwind don't have any styling, so let's make it look more pop. First increasing the text size, then font let's set to semi-bold, margin bottom 2, and star icon text yellow. Great. Then maybe add some margin to the right side. Oh, that's too much. Okay. I'm gonna modify the color of this text. Gray 800. So it's a little bit less this would be text gray 600, margin bottom 4, and heart icon right now we're not seeing it anywhere, and let's make it absolute in regards to this card that we have. So I'm gonna make the card relative and set the position of the absolute, which is gonna be bottom right corner. So bottom 4, right 4, some padding, and minus z minus 30, set the index. So width, height, and text primary, so it is of color pink. Now let's create the state to handle this clicking the heart. So that would be constant is or is not the listing favorite that determines it. So is favorite, set is favorite. That equals to use state, by default false, and then the function to handle that toggle, so constant handle favorite update, that equals to, we just take the state, previous is favorite, and then set to opposite of that. I'm gonna copy this function, and in the button that we have here, going to pass it as on click. Is favorite otherwise just display this one. Yep. And later on we're gonna add animation, so this like transition and clicking on favorite, we have more animated, more smoother, and it gives incentive the user to interact with it. This is our next challenge, and that would be to implement the search functionality. But in order for us to be able to search our results and filter them out, we need to somehow pass that information from the search to the results. see where we can do that. One way is, as I mentioned, we can lift the state up, but that is the tricky part because their parent component is a server component. And what we can't do is server component is either use context API from React, we're not able to do that, or add the state. But both of them, these two, have a state because they're client components. But let's try it out. Let's see if we get an error. So I'm gonna do import use state. And if we do constant, some sample state, let's say search, set search. Okay, now let's save it and reload. See, we get the error that we're importing a component that needs use state and it only works with client component. And same would be the case, which I tried earlier by myself, is I created context and then I try to import it. And yeah. And solution to this would be to use a state management library. You probably heard of Redux and Zustand. Those are the two that are most popular ones. And in this tutorial, we're gonna use Zustand. We first need to add this, only like one package is needed, and going to terminal, I'm pasting that. Oh, I don't need the comments. npm install Zustand. Let's hit enter, and while that is installing, this is a sample for creating a store. We can copy it and then modify it based on our needs. So for the store, I'm gonna create in the root. You can also create like a new, if it's more complicated advanced store, new file folder for it. And this is, so the way it works is it uses this create hook coming from the Zustand. We pass the set function, and then this is what's inside the store. So we have just a beers count to zeros, that's the initial state. Then we have this increase population function, and then remove all beers. So if we save this and, for example, call it from the layout, which I'll open to the right side. So we first import and need to export to be able to import. Let's save it. And we're inside layout that's in search, so that would be store. And if we say we update the state, so use bear store, we can use these functions, but let's see how we can update without the functions. If we don't have it created, we can say set state and then update beers. And that's how simple it is to just create store and being able to access it from the other. So if we reload this, we're not getting errors, so that works. Now let's remove this from here and actually update to the store so that it does like search. So search, and then if we look at our search, we have like 3 components. So first one, it's gonna be location, or the search input, so that's empty. Then we have dates. This is going to be an array, and I'm gonna add new date by default. Alright, and last we have guests. This would be count, so 0. Now what we can do is, instead of increase population, increase guests, and that would be guests. We do already have inside the state access to the guests, so guests plus 1. And we can also do the same to decrease guests and filters. And this is where it's good so that we don't have to redefine this again. We can do is create initial state, called constant initial state that equals to copy this, and here we can do the structuring of and same thing in here. We're gonna set it back to it. Now let's update the search so it uses the store that we just created and updates that. And then we'll see how we can access the store from search results and filter the data. So first, going to search bar, that would be here, and let's see where we have so this counter right here. We can access the counter, and it has a state of its own, and we don't need the state anymore. Instead, we'll import use search store at the top. And this is how we access specifically, like we don't need every element of the store, right? We just need the guest count. So that would be inside the counter, constant count equals to, and then we have use search store that takes in the state and returns the guest state for us. And the same goes for like the functions. That is how we can access the functions. So if we say increase count, oh, the name is increase guests, but inside our component we can name it whatever we want. So I'm gonna leave the count as is. So in here we don't have to access the state, we can just pass the function. So this would be, actually this is the increase, and that is the decrease, also the count itself. So count, we already renamed it, and this is it, so we don't have to update anything in here. Let's save this and just test it out. Okay, it works the same. Great. Constant search input, and let's do this. State the location. Actually, we can name this one as well, location input, so it's more clear what it's for. And let's write a function that's gonna handle the update. So constant handle location update. So this is an input element, so we need the event handler for that one, and it takes in an event. And then the way we can access the value is event.target.value. So, and we'll update the state. We can update state by using like this directly. So that would be use search store. And we can also check if this will reset the other states. But yeah, let's try it. Location, and location would be set to event.target.value. And where we are calling this from is inside our input. On change props and pass our function. And we also need to set the value, and that should be equal to location, so we're able, once we update the location in the state, we're able to see the changes. Now let's test that out. I'm gonna expand this, and now this turned into input, and let's do Paris, and let's see if we update guest to 5, and then if we update this state again, if this state remains, yeah, so it only updates this set state that I used here, only updates the location piece of it and not the other two. And one more remaining is our dates. So instead of selection range, oh, okay, I see what's going on. So start date, we do need the key selection, which we don't have it here. But we can, instead of start date and end date, we can use those two dates, and that would be from here. We can do something like this. And this would be dates, the first element, and then this would be the second date. We can remove this too. And we have to update the handle select, because instead of set start date, this is going to be using this one. And instead of check and setting them separately, because we don't have the state anymore, we can instead do this. So dates, create a new array, and then pass ranges that selection that start date as the first element, and ranges selection end date as a second element. All right, and I'm gonna remove this code. That's it. We don't need to update anything in here because we're already passing selection range, and since we updated start date and end date, it should take it in. So only thing is that location input, oh, instead of location input, I put in location here. So let's update the value for that and test our changes out. Ranges, okay, let's do this and this, and yeah, it's remained. Perfect. Now the issue with our search is that this is the expanded search, and there is no way to close this out. And to indicate that this is expanded, we need like a modal, kind of like Airbnb has when the rest of the page is darkened out. So let's fix that. Let's first add the modal, and then add the option that if user clicks away, it's gonna close. So we are gonna go to the header where our logic for expansion is. So here we have hooks and all that, and we'll add modal here. So modal would be one layer over the rest of the page, and it will only appear when the search is expanded. So let's create classes for modal classes, and once again using CLSX. So we want this to set to absolute. Then we'll have from top it would be 0, same thing from left as well. We want this to take the full like width and height. As for the Z index, so we want the header to show up first, then the modal, then the rest of the page. So it should be less than that of header. Let's see how much header has, and it does not have any. Okay, so we can set this to a high number, for example 50, and we can set this one to 10. So background would be black, but it's not gonna be full black because we're gonna set opacity to somewhat lower, so we are actually able to see the page. And we also want this, when it changes, to have some like transition effect. So transition opacity is the something that we want to transition on, and duration 300 is in and out the style of transition. And we'll add if hidden, it's not gonna show up if it's not is expanded, and it would be display block if it's expanded. Also, we want to slowly set the opacity, same thing. For this in here, and opacity 100, that would be for expand. Now we can place this modal outside our header. Since the position is absolute, it does not, like, the placement would not determine where it's actually placed on the HTML. And for class name, we pass modal classes. And here we have it's layering over the search page as we wanted. Only thing is that I think the index of the hearts are higher, so let's quickly fix that. They're popping out, so let's see, say 30, and then, oh, interesting note, so this is definitely higher because we set this to 50, so it should be search bar. Oh, this one is 10. Okay, so we can set this to 40 then, maybe. Perfect. User has clicked away from the search. We can use this package, and it comes with a function. It's called use click away. It's a hook, and inside the function we pass what we want to happen when user has clicked away. So let's first install the module. It's called, as I mentioned, React use. And to indicate on which element we want it to focus on, we have to create like a reference, so that would be use ref. And below where we define our states, we can create a new reference, constant ref equals to use ref. And by default this is null, but then we go down to our element and pass the ref. So that would happen to the header, and because it's our target element, so ref equals ref. And going back at the top, we need to also import the function use click away from React. And let's define what happens when use click away is triggered. First, we need to pass the ref so it knows which element we're talking about. Then we pass in the callback function. And in here, if it's clicked away, so for example, if header is expanded, then we want to close it. So we'll set is expanded to false. Let's test it out. So I'm gonna click here, reload, open, close, and yeah, it got closed when I clicked. Clean up the styling a bit in the header. I have updated this Airbnb logo, also the user logo with SVGs, and this is inside public images folder, and from the header we can just indicate them by passing source to the image. And once again, this images and assets will be part of the repository on the GitHub, and the link is in the description of the video. So what I did is at the top I imported next image, and using it I passed in the source on the first where we had this. Here we had text instead before. Then I passed height and width and alt text, and afterwards inside user, once again here we had just the user text, and I set the color so it inherits this color. I also set flex and item center so that this icon here was centered. And yes, I set the same width and height since this is a perfect circle, and indicated the path to the SVG. This accepts different file forms. It could be SVG, PNG, or JPEG. Now, what if we wanted to dynamically redirect towards the page? So previously we looked at how to create links, but what if not only we want to navigate to the link, but we also want that certain button or link to do something else as well? Then we need to kind of dynamically call it inside the function. And that could be done using useRouterHook, and we're going to use useRouterHook on this search button right here. So let's go to the search bar. First at the top we'll import the hook. From next navigation. And we need to create a router that references to use router. And let's see, do we have a function? Okay, so this is just a link, and if we go to search results page, but we also want to close this out, right? So instead of link, I'm gonna turn this into a button, and I'm gonna add an on click that says handle search click. I have not yet created the function, but I'm gonna do that next. Okay, router.push, and we also need to set the expanded to false, but the issue is that our parent component header has the set expanded. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pass a function to toggle expanded to our search bar. So it's here, and copy. Let's I just needed the name. All right. And we're gonna call that from here. Let's save it, click search, and we do get an error. Toggle expanded is not a function. I have not pressed saved on this one. Okay. Results page and close that. Let's try it one more time. Open this, press search. Here it is. It closed and it redirected us. So if we take this, because this includes the list of results as well as like the filtering and fetching the data, only thing we would have to update is this is the page itself for results. This is already inside the same folder. So now if we go to, let's say here, we get to same page, which you can see it didn't reload because it was already cached. But now what we can add on just the search page is, for example, before we display results, we can also display things like categories, etc. But we can add here, for example, a button. And I'm gonna set this to flex item center. It would serve just like a hero section that websites usually have, and we want the width of this to be screen. I don't know if that's, yeah. Background cover 24, so we're able to see the image, and then I'm gonna add background image URL to this images folder and the name of the file. So let's save this, go to our page. Okay, so we're able to see the image, and let's make it bigger so it looks nicer. 48, I don't know if that's gonna be too big. Okay. That's not bad. Now maybe we'll pick a color for the button. So text we want white. So we have contrast, rounded large. I already set it. Background color. Let's make it pink. 700. Okay, padding X4, padding Y2. It's not bad. I sometimes use this color picker eyedropper, so maybe if we pick a color from here that might look nicer. We can check. If not, this doesn't look bad. So for custom colors, this is what we do. Okay, I can turn it up. And we can add on hover, make it lighter. So background. Maybe something little further away. Okay. This color very much reminds me of Bootstrap color. I think that's what they had it set as a default. So yeah, it gets updated on hover, and let's try to see if rounded we have large. Full looks better. Yep, it goes more along with Airbnb's like love of rounded corners. Have this button to search results page. And we can set this as a flex grow, so it stretches all the way out. So in both cases here, I'm gonna add, I believe it's flex grow or either just like grow. It's the parent that needs, okay. Yeah, the button itself. Yep, that looks a little bit better. Maybe we need padding also on this side. So what if we make all sides 2? Yep, that's way better. This to the top when this is expanded, and the reason it's in center is because we had set it flex items to item center, but what we can do is also make this conditional, so constant user icon classes. I'm gonna paste them in here, and we will have an object that's gonna have this. So first is not expanded, and I noticed this too should also be like, oops, string. Anyways, save it, and items center. Oh, I have not applied it. Okay. Let's see. Yep, it remains at the top. It's truly fascinating to see how many animations go into building a simple interaction like this one, but of course it's very like crucial, for example, for like this search functionality for Airbnb. And I even have a video here, like a slow motion, and as you can see, the search kind of like first expands it out and this like simpler version disappears, and then when we're closing it, this goes like advanced goes up and becomes smaller, and we are presented with the simpler version of the search. And there's small lot of animations going on, but it may look very complex. You'd have to trust me that it's not, and I'll show you guys how to do that right now. For the animations, we can use this library. It's called Framer Motion, and it makes creating different kinds of animations very simple. So for example, this one right here where the square shows up, this is how we can see it's done. Just like any div is turned, or for example paragraph span, you can turn it to a motion element by adding that motion in front of it, and then we can indicate initial state, which is when when it initially appears, and then we can pass another state, which is what happens on the animate, which is it rotates 180 and it also appears. At first its scale is 0, so it's not visible. And then transition is what kind of animation while it transitions from initial to animate we want it to happen, and in this case we we pass type. There's different kinds of types, and stiffness, damping, etc. There's also a lot of other variants that you can use to modify to your liking, but let's start using this one. First, we can install, as I mentioned, it's a library, so I'm going to copy npm install framer motion, go back to our project, and inside here I'll paste that in. And the first element we're gonna use this on is going to be actually here, the header, and we want to animate this right here. So copy this up. First, what we can do to animate is we can define variants. So let's take a look at what variants are. So this is the animation, and this is where we have variants defined. It's basically you are passing different states, but you're creating like a separate object. So if you have like a lot of this, you can also pass it inside here. But this is more readable and it's easier to find and update it. So here they have two states, hidden and visible. And for us, we're gonna have 3 states. First is going to be initial. So let's define that now. Constant search container variance that equals to, so initial, hidden, and enter. On the initial, opacity is going to be 1, height is auto, y is 0, and scale is 1. So initially this search, the one we have right here, shows up. So that's why we have scale opacity 1, and it's positioned in its natural position. But when it's turned into hidden, which we'll do it like manually, as in not on the page load or anything, it disappears. So opacity goes to 0, height also goes to 0, otherwise it'll take up the space in the DOM. Y is 100 because it's also, while it's disappearing, it's getting pushed up, and scale 2 because it's expanding, it's being pushed down and it's also expanding, so that it's gonna turn into a more advanced search. And the enter is going to be same as this one. Okay, so how do we apply those variants? We have to go to wherever button, and how do we turn this into a motion? First, let's import motion from framer motion. Also, besides this video, if you want to learn more about framer motion, I have, or practice it, I have another video where I create more like a landing page website, so you guys can check that out. And so turn this into a motion button. Yep, that's it. Now we can pass initial state. So this is where we pass the name of initially what happens, and this is coming from here. So if we named it something else, then we would pass that initially. It could be hidden, it could be like whatever you name it, and animate. Okay, so animate is conditional because if it is expanded, if the header is expanded, then we want this to be hidden, so animation would be hidden. And if it's not, then we just set it to initial, and on exit, like when it's exiting out, like disappearing, on exit, then we can also pass, let's make this more extended. So we have exit, and then we have what kind of transition do we want. This passing transition is optional, we don't have to, but let's see how what type we can use. I'm gonna do linear. Let's save it. So once again, initially animations kick in when it's either expanded or closed. On exit, transition, and yep, that's it. Let's check it out. I also noticed that when the animation previously was getting back to its initial state, something was causing it to look a little bit off, so I realized it was coming from maybe the new version of Framer Motion, because when I installed it, installed the 16, but I was previously using 14. Hopefully by the time you're installing this, they have, in the newer versions, they have that fixed. But if it's also showing up for you and it's behaving weirdly, you can downgrade to this version or any other packages that you want to check that you have same versions as I have. You can always check the GitHub link for that. And now going back to our header, let's add animations for the search bar. So the animations for this one is going to be kind of like opposite, because when the first search, opposite of the first search, when first one disappears, this kind of like appears, and we can define 3 states. Initially it's hidden, then it enters, then on not expanded anymore, it exits. And we can also copy this and like kind of revert it, starting off with opacity 0, then we have height 0, so y would be minus 100, and scale is 0. Now for the enter, this is 1, this is auto, 0 and 1. Last one for the exit, height 0. Okay, so this one we can have it same as the hidden, which is initial. And let's see where the parent, okay, we can wrap, because this is a component, so we can't say motion.search bar, but we can create like a motion. So we can place it inside and make sure it shows up properly in this new div flex column. Justify center, then we pass in variance, tab variance. So initial state is hidden, animate is expanded, then it enters it. Otherwise initial. And let's also do transition, same type as we have for the other one. Okay, and we can wrap this into container together and make it like flex grow, so it takes up the space. In the header, that would be flex column, and then grow. And that would include the button as well. Pick this spreading the full width, but other than that, I think the rest looks good. That would be inside the search container classes, that's the button. So width we can set to auto, and then self-center. Great. You have the option for users to update the values of search and store them, but this, like the labels itself, are placeholders. So let's update, and when user, for example, puts in the value, this should also get updated. And going to the header, I think that is in search bar. So location input, we will check in here if there's an input. If not, then we will return like the default placeholder. This doesn't equal to empty string, then we display that. Otherwise, what was the search destinations? Okay, and then, yeah, it still says that. Next, we have the select ranges that we want to update. So this would be, let's see what we have by default. I guess because by default we already do have dates, they are not empty, right? We can check that inside the search store. Oh, not the state. So yeah, it's current date, but we can update, we can reset the name. So for example, if user presses handle select date selection, we can say label use state, and by default this is going to be select ranges. And once user interacts with this like ranges selector, then we're gonna update our local state and put it as the first date. And from the second date. Update this in here. Any date. Okay, so it does update, but it gives us this like the long expression. So we can change this to a human readable function to date string, because these two are of type of date, so we can use this function on them. Let's copy, do the same in here, and I select to date string is to date, oh, not string date string, sorry about that. Okay. Yeah, that looks better. Guests, so this should update as well. So we do have a counter that has inside like the access to the guest store, but we also need that inside the header, inside the search bar, like the parent of the counter. So counter is the drop down here because the label is in here, add guests. So yeah, that should be a pretty simple change. We get the count, we already have the use source, so we just access it, and let's copy this. So if count is more than 0, we're gonna display and return count. If not, add guests and close this out. Let's test it out. 3, and then let's do count the number and the guests. So that would be guests. Yep, that looks great. What we're gonna work on is how we display the search items on the mobile, and let's see how Airbnb has the mobile menu. So as you can see at the top, it has this component that kind of looks like a search input, but indeed when you press it, it's a button that opens up a modal, and this modal has 3 components for 3 different filters. First one is automatically selected and it's open, but each of the single components are collapse cards when they're, or like kind of like accordions, and when they're clicked, only one gets selected and expanded. So inside each single one, there's a different content. And at the end, it has clear all to clear the filters and search button. So let's replicate that, make something similar. For that one, we're gonna first need to create a mobile navigation, like a separate component that we will import into our header. So let's create a component and let's import that. So inside search components, new file, mobile nav. So for now, I'll create a very simple component and display it only on mobile. That's the first functionality we're gonna do. So export mobile default, export default mobile nav. Let's import it into the header. And we will add this below here. What we have to do is also make sure that on smaller screens, the actual menu that we use for desktop is hidden, and we can do that using the hidden class. So let's do this. Add this query from Tailwind. So on hidden, by default it will be hidden, and then on medium screens the display would be flags. And let's do the same for this Airbnb or the logo, and we can close these 2 out. As for the mobile now, let's wrap this into another class, and in here in the class name we'll have on the medium, other way around, it would be hidden, and if not, by default it would be flex grow. let's place that inside. And check, so on the mobile we're not seeing the menu anymore, we see the text mobile navigation. Put like button that opens up a modal when clicked. So for the modal we are once again going to use Daisy UI, so I'm gonna copy the label here, go to our mobile navigation and start creating the element. So in here I will remove this text and create a main parent component. Let's add a margin at the top, set it to 2, and then we will add a label. Inside the label we are not gonna say open modal, but we'll add more components like magnifying glass and this text, which is from Airbnb, anywhere, any week, add guest. So for the magnifying glass, let's import that from the hero icons. I misspelled this one. And let's add a class name for width and height and also for the color. So this will set it to 5, and then color text gray 400. As for our text, we'll create a new div. So first at the top we're gonna have head h2 and it says anywhere. Then we have the 2 for the class name. Let's make this flex, and flex row would be the direction. So first span is any week, and then we have another span that shows the dot, and finally add guests. And let's add a dot in between any week and add guest. So save this, we get an error because magnifying glass icon import was wrong. So once fixing that should be correct. Now let's update the stylings of the button. So in mobile nav, changing class to class name and adding styling, setting the width to full. We're gonna set display to flex. Direction would be row. Text we want to be aligned left, adding some border radius, padding, centering it, adding gaps, and also we want to have a border with a drop shadow. Let's save this, and this is the result. And now we can move on to updating the content inside this button. So magnifying glass icon, that we already have styles for that. Let's change anywhere, like that sort of serves like a label, so we're gonna make it in font size bigger than the rest, as well as for the bold, so it would be font semi-bold and text would be of size medium. And for the rest inside this flex, we're gonna also set the text color gray 500, so for all of them, so that we don't have to do it separately, we're going to do it to the parent container. And let's add some margins on the right, so span class name margin right -2, and we will copy this class name, paste it on all of this 3 instances in here. and save it. So that got updated. Now what we want to do is add a little bit of padding on the horizontally on the parent container, so that looks better. For the model, we're going to once again use Daisy UI, and here I am on their documentation page where they have a sample code for the model, which I'm going to copy it and paste inside our mobile nav component. I'm just going to add a comment for where we're going to start the model logic, and below that paste the comment. We have to make sure the ID for and the label matches each other, otherwise if we click here it will not open. But we do see a model with a sample code inside here. And let's update the close, add the close button with an icon. For the icon, I'm gonna once again import with the same package, solid one. It's called Xmark icon. And copying the name here, we're gonna go and display that at the end of the model. So wherever it says close, we can update that with our icon and pass the class names to the icon so that it shows up. We need to set the height, width, and the color. So, and instead of class, this should be class name. Because we copied HTML, that's why we have to change all the classes to class names. Anyway, I will replace this model backdrop with absolute. I want to position absolute to the model on the right top corner. So right setting 0, top setting 0 as well, but the margin from the top would be 4 and the right would be 4. And let's add the class button close. That's from like the Daisy UI example. As for the icon class name setting, the same classes we can copy from what we have for magnifying class icon. And the text gray, we can fix this, should be -400. Now this will get updated, as well as copy and place it for this one. Maybe try moving this inside the model box, that way it might show up. Yep, here it is, and if we press this, it should close the model. Let's create an array of all the filters, search filters that we want to have displayed, and later on we're going to create a separate component for collapsed carts so we can reuse among these different filters. So we will start with naming mobile menu, and this would at first simply be array with labels where, and this will be an array and it will contain objects with labels, and we will add content in this object as well. First we have where, then it's when and question mark. Finally we have whom. And I am going to create another div in here where we can map this menu. So div, and add some margin at the top of it to make sure that it doesn't overlap this button that we have here. So this would be margin top, let's do 6 because button is of width and heights of 5, and we can map this out. Item and index. And we can display item that label. So that shows up, and then let's add the footer at the bottom. That would be for the clear all and the search. New div tag, class name, we'll name this modal footer. And inside, let's create another class for the footer content, modal footer content. We'll create a new div for clear all, and another one. This one is going to be a button for search. Okay, now let's make this two spread out and style them. For that, I will turn this into a flex container and add some padding around it, justify between items, center, and width is full, perfect. For this one, I'm just gonna add an underline. And so this is one cool thing. I have the extension installed for Tailwind, which lets me, if you're new to Tailwind, you can hover over the classes and it will show you what is like the CSS equivalent of it. So that's the great way of like learning Tailwind. And CSS for this, I just like named that, but flags, we can inspect all of them, all the utility classes. And let's move on to the our button now. Class name, I'm gonna set background to primary. Then we have some paddings on the side. We want it to be rounded. Let's set rounded medium. Text should be white and margin or on the right side too. We also are going to add a magnifying glass in here, so let's turn this so we'll have two elements, flex, and then justify center. Items would be center, and we already have a magnifying glass imported, so we'll place it before search, but let's first put wrap search inside a span. Place it in here. One thing that I'm going to change is text, make it white, so same color as the search text, and this button got updated. I will also remove this header and extra paragraph that was just from the sample code from their documentation. And for the collapse card, we are going to go to components, create new file, name it collapse card. And this would be a reusable card that's gonna take in children that would go inside when the card is, or accordion is like expanded. We can also say is current, because we can only have one card expanded at a time, and a title. So after that we can have a return and write some HTML where we first wrap this in the div, then we give like a header to it, so that would be class name, collapse card header, and here goes the title. Let's put this into an H2. Okay, and then here we're gonna have class collapse card body. At first, let's display by default. And children. So how do we pass this children in the collapse card? That is very simple, and I'm gonna show it now. First, let's import collapse card. Oh, I have not exported it. Export default collapse card and import that one from they're in the same folder. And here, instead of mapping the labels, we can say collapse card, but we pass this one as a title. So its props takes in a title that would be title equals to item.label. And then inside here, this is how we pass the children. For example, first I'm just gonna say children and create this element. Let's go here and refresh maybe. Yep. So here we have the title first and then the children. Now let's add the styling so we can modify this and show accordingly. So going to close this one first, and let's import CLCX at the top because we're gonna need some of the conditional styling here. First, we are gonna target our styling for like the main collapse card, and starting that, naming it collapse card classes equals CLCX. So first, collapse card, just for naming purposes, background would be white. Then we have rounded LG, large, add some shadow, padding, and margin. Then we have this condition where, if you can see in here, the shadow is larger on like the open tabs. So we're gonna say shadow large if it's not current, so currently selected, otherwise shadow 2XL, and that would be for collapse card classes. Let's pass it on. So here we have by default none of them is the current. Let's update some styling for the title that we have here, and collapse card title classes. Text, we can set size to medium. Font will make it semi-bold, and text gray 600. As for, let's add some margin at the bottom. And if it's selected, let's make it the text bigger and like more bold than for the other ones. Text gray 600 if it's not current. $800 text XL. and pass that on. And we need to keep track of what is currently set and what's not. That we can do by creating a new state, and that would be import use state from React and constant current tab set current tab that equals to use state. By default, the first one is selected, and let's inside this collapse card we can say we need to pass is current. That would be if current tab equals to index, so that will set our first one. That should set our first one as the current. Yeah, you can see the difference between first and the other ones. Okay, so one thing, shadow, let me remove this. Okay, now we have a darker shadow. Maybe let's do Excel. 2XL is too big. Okay, yeah, that's better. As for the children, we have to show that conditionally. So if is current, actually let's this, otherwise null. So we only see the children of the first one that is selected now. Now we need to update when we click on the element on which gets like opened and gets set as a current. So since the logic for current state is inside mobile nav, here we can create a function and then pass that function to the collapse cards. So constant handle current update, this take in the new tab index, and we'll just return set current tab to that tab index, and copying this one, pasting it to the collapse card update tab, and we'll also create this props inside the collapse card update tab handle current tab update. Save this, and in the destructuring here we're gonna add this update tab. Okay, so now for us to trigger the function, we can turn div into a button, but then once the card is open, right, in that case we might have inner filters in here. So for example, if this whole container is a button, we won't be able to use this inside as separate buttons. So once it's open, we just want the parent container to be just a regular div. Once it's not, then this right here should be button. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, I'm just gonna code it out right now, and that would be more clear. So if it's not current, then we can return, and this would be button, and technically we can pass the same thing. We can remove this children, and what we also need is to get the index. So when we call this function, we can pass the index, so update tab, and in here key is also index because we have to identify that these are unique, and index when we're mapping out things. So button, and here on click, and create callback function, and this would be update tab, while passing index. Save it. Oh, interesting. It does show up as a button. It did change the because we have the styling on the div, not the button, so it looks different. Okay, let me remove this fragment. So collapse card classes with full. Great. Let's update also the text to be on the left side, and that would be in collapse card classes. It's text left, and now we can start adding like the children itself for the filters. And first one, we're gonna have an input box here, and it would be similar to how we have on without like the mobile, but just the styling would be different. Otherwise it'll update the same state. And for components, we can create a new folder, name it mobile, and inside here we can create a new file. I'm gonna name this desti input.j, and we don't need this one. Destination input that equals to last name. Let's do destination input. And before we add any styles, let's just like display the content and see how we can like dynamically display the children for each of these filters. So span, I'm gonna add magnifying glass icon. So for this one we need to add some styling, because otherwise if we don't add width and height, it's not gonna show up. And let's do text gray 400. And outside of this span, we can add input type equals text, and export default destination input. So if we go to our mobile navigation here, we can import this component and save it. But if we just update and place it here, then it means that it would show up for every single one of them. But what we can do instead is we can add another field that says content, and we not only can pass like primitive values, primitive which is string, integer, etc. inside the values, but we can pass like the component itself. So I'm gonna do destination input, and now we can update the same way we're using dynamically like the item.label. We can use item.content, and that means that it would show up only for this one, because the other ones don't have that value empty for now until we add their components. But let's go back to destination input now and update the styling. So starting off with the main container, we're gonna do background white So we added some border, made it flex and border radius. Now let's update input. Okay, adding some background color so it's transparent and rounded would be full, outline none. One thing is their alignment, it should be side by side. I realized that the class names and styles are not showing up because I misspelled this here. So, and let's update that, and that's great. So what we can do is we can use the same functions that the desktop version of the header has to once user starts typing in here to update the value for example, location and dates and the number of guests. And also for maybe like the date picker, we can wrap that into a separate component and reuse that component across the mobile and the desktop. So I'm gonna do that right now, and afterwards update the search function as well. So what we did here is we passed the value of already state search, already the state inside the store, and also the function to update the store only for the location. I assume my import is one more. Well, that's because I just copied it from here. So if we start updating, this should update the state, because if we close this out, return here, we should still see the Germany. Now let's move on to the date picker and display that here. What we did is we extracted out the logic that we need to display the date range picker and also all the according functions, since this is kind of like reusing some of the logic, copying some of it, but also applying to the specific needs so we can create reusable components. I would say that you should try to do this yourself, and then if you can figure it out, like to learn and practice it, come back and like watch it. And same thing for like the third content that we're gonna add. But first let's see, once we have that, test it out. So use state is not defined because we need to import that as well. Okay. And now we can see the calendar. Only thing is that it does not fit the screen. We can look into how we can update, so maybe we only get the picker, not this in here. Let's take a look. Going towards the React date range documentation, we can see that there's different options on how this calendar is to be displayed. So the one we're using on desktop is the full view, but there are others like separated, for example, this one, multiple range, inserting our labels, and just the date range. So this is probably what we need without like this defined range because of the space. So let's copy this date range, use that one instead, and I'm gonna update this. Hopefully its props are similar. If not, we can check how we are able to update that. Now the page, we only see the date range, and let's update and remove the user icon on smaller screens because it's stretching out our width of our application. So we can add the same logic as we have for the Airbnb logo, so it will be hidden by default, and then on larger screens display would be flags, and that's going to go inside this user icon classes, and if we command click it would take us there, and we would add that extra logic in here, removing the flags, and now we reload, we don't see that icon anymore. Let's also fix this little bit like overflow, and on the info cards we had set the maximum width, which is medium, but we'll set this only for larger screens. So on smaller screens it kind of resets and fits into the screen like width, as in here it shows on the screen no cards are overflowing. Great. Now we can also update the bottom margin of the card so the heart icon is not overflowing the text, and here we have a little bit more space. And next thing we can do is we have left to add a content inside who, and that would be the counter. Since we created a reusable component for counter here in the search bar, we're gonna grab that. So let's copy that and navigate back to our mobile menu. So let's put this on the side here so we can see. And once again, command click mobile nav, that would open our component and the file. And on top here, we're gonna import the counter. So I think it is default import, so it's other way around, not default. So curly braces import counter from, and we are inside components folder, so we directly say counter. And in content here, on the third item in the array, we add that in. Let's save it and check it out. Yeah, it's here, and if we test it, it gets updated. Now I have use store file open to the side, and inside mobile nav I'm gonna import use search store so that we can use remove all filters function on clear all link that we have inside the mobile menu. So let's import use search store, and it's coming from the store. Then we create a function remove all filters, and this would equal to use search stores. We access the state, and then state function state remove all filters, as you can see on the right side inside the file. And we take this function and go find where our clear all is. Here it is. We have a div, but let's turn this into a button and pass unclick the function. Now I'm gonna save this, can't resolve. I think the import statement of the store is incorrect. We're missing one more folder back, and now we have that. Let's update the state and test it out. So if I type in something here, and that would show up, clear all. Was there initial state? I think, yeah, it's spelled wrong. That's why it tells. I'm just gonna copy and paste. Save it. Let's try one more time. Germany, clear all, and now state gets reset. Now we will implement animations when user hearts the listing, and for that we're going to use animate function from Framer Motion. That function can be scoped to elements like list items, div, SVG, etc., and can be used for more complex use cases like animation sequencing, and it gets cleaned up after element is removed. So first, to use that, let's import motion and use animate from Framer Motion inside our info card from Framer Motion, and then we would need to create a use effect hook, so I'm gonna import that from React as well. And the next step would be to create scope and the function animate, and that would equal to coming from use animate hook. Scope would be the scope of what we are animating, and then animate function would be what we would call when we want that to happen. So this use effect would be only triggered when isFavorite state changes. So that means when user either clicks the heart or clicks again to undo the favorite. So let's add a timeout ID. We're going to use that later. But to add the logic, so if is favorited, then we want an animation, and we're going to target this on SVG because our heart is SVG, and this would be scale 0 from 1. So the field heart icon that we have is going to go from being non-visible to having a scale of 1. And then the next thing we can define is the duration. So how long does it take to do that? And that we can create a separate object, duration, and pass. I'm going to pass 0.5, which is 5 seconds. And the type of the animation, that is going to be the spring. So then there's another use case where user defavorites it. So we can define that inside our else statement. And we can copy the animate, just change its logic. So from scale, it's going to be already 1. We're going to go from 1 to 0. And save that one. Next thing would be defining the scope. So wherever we have this filled heart icon, I'm going to remove this conditional rendering, because if we do have conditional rendering, we're not going to be able to see this animation. So let's first create a separate span for heart icon and place it in here. And after that one, we are going to create a separate div that we will pass our scope to for the animation. So div ref equals scope, and then we can also create a class name, same as the other button has. Only thing is we can update the syntax so the button remains clickable, and inside here we want to pass this field heart that's gonna actually have this animation of scaling and like descaling. Let's close that one, and by default set the scale to 0. Save it. So if we click, it slowly grows and then it becomes smaller and disappears. So another animation that we're going to do is this confetti effect, and React Reverse is a perfect package we can use for that. They have different reward animations that you can add, and we are going to copy the install command and paste it inside our terminal. Once that's loaded here in this code sandbox, there's different kind of props it's taking, so you can tweak some of them and understand how it changes the animation and test it out right there. So it's very simple. For example, we increase start velocity and it goes like faster in the beginning. Then we have decay. Let's see what that does. Yeah. And going back to our info card where we're going to be also using that, I'm going to import use reward. That would be the hook from React rewards. And I'm going to paste the reward configurations that I had defined, but you can always change them. So here we create constant reward, and is animating is a state that tells us if the animation is in process or not, and we call this use reward hook. So what we want is this animation to trigger after our first animation is done, and also we want this only on the listing that user is clicking on. So that's why in the first argument inside this use reward we are passing reward and listing ID. So we want it unique to the listing. We don't want every listing to get animated. Then animation type, confetti, they also have balloon, I think, emojis. And finally the third argument is reward configs that I just defined on line 9. Next thing we do is the logic of this and when is it triggered. So duration of our first animation, as we have, is 0.5, right? So we can delay the trigger of the reward, and we can do that using set timeout. So timeout ID, that would equal to set timeout. Then I'm gonna call reward function and pass in 500, so that will be 500 milliseconds later trigger this. But when we're doing set timeout inside use effect, we have to like clean it up when, I guess, component is not mounted anymore. So that would mean returning this function clear timeout. So that should reset our timeout. And passing timeout ID. And the next thing would be passing which which element we want this to be positioned at. So we have span on top of heart icon. So we're going to say ID equals to, and the unique ID that we pass to use reward. So I'm just going to copy this from here and pass it in the span. So let's save this. And we get the confetti animation when the heart that we're targeting icon gets filled. Let's go over one more time what we built, which was the search functionality with 3 different types of filters, created pages, we built server as well as client components with data fetching, and the mobile responsive design. That will be all for this tutorial, and if you enjoyed it, please subscribe and look out for the next one. I'll see you in there.